Hey, Anthony here, how to get into dramaschool.com. In this video, you're going to learn how to own Shakespeare's text with your own natural voice and speech. It's so easy for us to think I should use a British dialect with this material. It's natural to feel that way. I definitely felt that way when I was a younger actor, but fortunately I was given guidance that I should use my own voice and speech. So I encourage you to just set the standard that you're only going to use your own voice and speech. Now, that may be a little easier said than done, and we always want to understand why. Because Shakespeare's plays were written in London, they were performed in London, many of them take place in London, and so if you're really inhabiting those imaginary circumstances, Richard III, for example, who's trying to take over the English crown, you think, well, shouldn't I be using a British accent here? Many of Shakespeare's plays took place in other countries, like Italy. It's not like they used Italian accents when Shakespeare had them first performed. And so that should be an indication to you that Shakespeare is not about, you have to honor the accent, right? And the amount of time that Shakespeare's plays have been relevant and around and how many actors have performed them successfully should also indicate to you that this is material that can transcend dialect or accent. I'm not going to necessarily go into when you should use dialects in Shakespeare, but what I do want you to do is approach all Shakespeare from your own voice and speech. Wherever you're from, use your authentic voice and your speech. Similar to the way I'm speaking now, you have a way of speaking. So speak in that way. Now, there are contemporary aspects to the way we speak, and there are regional aspects to the way we speak. We call them regionalisms or modernisms. If you use overly contemporary styles or, behavior, then yes, that can actually get in the way of the flow of that language. And these are some topics kind of for another time. But what you want to do is a couple things to own this text with your own voice and speech. Number one, when you approach this text, it's easy to really imagine all of the things it can be and just jump right to what it should look like, or right to what it should sound like, or right to how you would perform it, right? It's easy. We're actors. We are storytellers. We want to jump to how it's going to look, You want to inhibit that impulse. You want to just start with putting it out into the room. Put the material out into the room. Read it out loud with your own way of speaking and let it land on you. Just be in the room that you're in the body that you're in, and in the way of speaking that you speak, and just put it into the room. And try to make sense of it. It's not going to all make sense. None of us understand or comprehend Shakespeare 100%. We have to look up words, we have to look up references, but put it out into the room. And that will allow the material to land on you in a way that kind of feels personal and go, okay, that makes sense. And now you don't have to feel any pressure to perform it a certain way. Nobody's watching you. We're just kind of approaching the text. Forget about the end result. Start with just putting it into the room. The next thing you need to do as you get more used to the language, let's say you're working on a monologue and you're kind of reading the monologue over and over again. You want to kind of keep it personal, because as you start to realize what the circumstances are and you start to realize who they're talking to and what they're wanting and how the journey of the monologue goes and how it changes, you're like, okay, let me play that. Let me and that's totally normal. Everybody has that impulse to just jump to that result, but really you want to let that result appear as a result of your process. So process over product. If you haven't heard that, that is a tenet of good acting. You want to just focus on the process, and if you do all the work, you can give the gift, and that will be a really compelling performance. You can't jump to a really compelling performance with a bunch of shortcuts. You have to go through the process, and this is what we're talking about. So as you discover some of the nuances of what happens in the piece, what I would encourage you to do is keep it personal. If you're realizing that you're playing Richard III and you're doing a soliloquy where you're talking to the audience about all the devious things you're going to do to get the crown, you might have the one road that is in your head, okay, I know what that is, and I should play that. And then the other road in your head is where you want to go, which is a question, which is, what would it be like to tell a bunch of people that I'm going to take the crown? Keep it personal. You want a backbone of truth throughout the entire thing, all the way through your performance. So you'll lose that if you start to depart from your sense of truth and you just start to, present an idea of what you think people can take. Like, you don't want to present your idea of what it should look like. You want to represent the truth of these circumstances. And if you stay personal, if you keep it personal, then that's why we can see a million Hamlets. That's why we can see a million Juliets, because we've heard the language before. We know she kills herself in the end, but it's still compelling to us because that actor's backbone of truth, that's how this actor experiences those circumstances. They are living through those circumstances and not presenting an idea of what they think it should look like. Does that make sense? So you're approaching the text easily. You're putting it out into the room using your own voice and speech. And then as you get more familiar with the circumstances and you dive more into what's actually happening here, the desires of the character, the thoughts, how they're trying to change the other person, you're keeping it personal. What would it be like if I placed a curse on a baby, right? Queen Margaret, she places curses on babies. What would that actually be like? So keep it personal. Then, after you've gone through some of these processes and explored what that's like, and it's now starting to live in your body, and you've been using your own way of speaking this whole time, you can start to really let your authenticity go places, right? Authenticity doesn't mean casual. These are high stakes. We have to honor how important these moments are to these characters. Plays are not written about the second most important moment in someone's life. They're written about the most important moment in someone's life. So it should feel extremely important to you. And it will be easier to feel that way if you've gone through this process. And now you should feel that freedom to follow impulses. You should feel that freedom to use language, use the vowels, use the consonants. There are so many words that we use when we get emotional, when we have high stakes. There's so many vowels and consonants that we elongate to emphasize what we're saying, or to, sometimes we think of the word like, oh, how and we can say that word in so many different ways, like, oh, right? You're letting thoughts and emotions ride the language. And that's where a lot of the fun comes in. After you've got that sort of backbone, you can really use those vowels, use those consonants to emphasize your point. And then it will be coming from an authentic place, as opposed to trying to use language at the beginning when you haven't even done all that, approaching of the work and personalizing of it. If you just jump right to, oh, to be or not to be, like, it just be random. You don't want to be random. You want the emphasis and the elongation and of all those thoughts to come from the emotions, right? That's what we do in real life. The emotions and the high stakes cause us to use vowels and consonants. It's not the other way around. So that's kind of the process in which you want to move through this, as opposed to just jumping to an idea of what it should look like and trying to accomplish a result. Hope that makes sense. Thanks for listening, and have fun playing Shakespeare.